Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. The world of Harry Potter is rich in wonderful characters, each with their own quirks, flaws, strengths and weaknesses. Overall, the films did a fantastic job of bringing these characters from page to screen, but of course, there were differences. In some cases, these differences made the characters noticeably, sometimes much, more powerful than they were in the books. Let's take a closer look at a few such examples. Enjoy watching. Number 1. Albus Dumbledore. Dumbledore was always one of the most powerful wizards in the Harry Potter universe, but in the films his power is portrayed as even more impressive. One especially memorable moment is his duel with Voldemort in Order of the Phoenix, filled with dramatic visual effects and tension. In Half-Blood Prince, he fills the cave with a massive, roaring fire while retrieving the Horcrux, whereas in the book, the flame is described much more modestly. The films also tweak details of apparition. Dumbledore calmly whisks Harry away straight from the astronomy tower, even though in the books they have to go beyond the school boundaries. Harry is even surprised by this, and Dumbledore jokingly refers to it as a headmaster privilege. Number 2. Harry Potter. To make the films more cinematic, the creators focused more on magical duels and fights, especially in the final movie where Harry's battle with Voldemort turns into a real one-on-one showdown. Even though Harry is often running and dodging, the scene still plays out like a fight between equals. In the books, Harry can't actually match Voldemort in open combat. His victory relies on the Elder Wand's loyalty and a simple Expelliarmus. He doesn't do anything particularly extraordinary. The films, however, give him a much more serious challenge, turning the finale into an epic confrontation. Number 3. Hungarian Horntail. In Goblet of Fire, Harry takes part in the Triwizard Tournament and faces the Hungarian Horntail in the first task. Both in the book and film, his plan is to lure the dragon into the air on his broomstick, but the execution is vastly different. In the book, Harry simply maneuvers and waits for the dragon to lift off so he can grab the egg. In the film, this becomes an intense, dangerous chase. The dragon breaks free of its chain, gives Harry no chance to rest, and even flies after him across the rooftops of Hogwarts, making it feel like a real fight to the death. Number 4. Dolores Umbridge. Umbridge is one of the series' most memorable villains, even giving Voldemort a run for his money with her sickly, sweet politeness and blind loyalty to the Ministry. Her mannerisms, condescension, and hypocritical charm are wonderfully captured on screen, but the films even gave her a bit more power and control in a key scene. When Hermione and Harry lure her into the Forbidden Forest, the Centaurs deal with her fairly quickly in the book. In the film, though, Umbridge initially keeps control of the situation, even incapacitating one of the Centaurs and appearing far more dangerous before Grawp finally tips the balance. Number 5. Hermione Granger. Hermione has always been the symbol of intelligence and determination, a role model for many girls. In the films, her character keeps these core traits, but her abilities are clearly boosted, mostly by reducing Ron's role. As a result, the Golden Trio lost some of its balance. In the books, Hermione is certainly clever and driven, but she also has plenty of weaknesses. She tends to think too literally, is socially awkward, and is so obsessed with studying that it causes her stress and conflict. These traits almost vanish in the films, turning her into an almost flawless figure, someone who's always right and always finds the solution. Number 6. Severus Snape. Severus Snape always felt like a shadow in the books. He spoke in cutting lines and cold silences. When he fought McGonagall in Deathly Hallows, it was quick. Snape shouted a hex and she deflected it, Rowling wrote. He didn't linger. He fled the castle as students watched, leaving only the memory of his betrayal behind. His magic felt precise, but never grand. The film transformed that moment into something operatic. Snape stood alone in the Great Hall, black robes swirling. McGonagall advanced with fury in her eyes. Spells collided in bright streams of fire and green light. He didn't just parry her attacks, he redirected them with perfect control, sending them crashing into the carrows at his side. The students stared in open awe. He was a master at work, untouchable even in retreat. When he finally chose to flee, he didn't bolt for the door. Instead, he blasted the windows behind him into shards, letting the moonlight pour in. He rose in a column of black smoke and vanished into the night. The film gave Snape the exit of a dark legend. He didn't just leave Hogwarts, he escaped it like a phantom, leaving everyone behind to wonder how they had ever hoped to stop him. Number 7. Minerva McGonagall. Minerva McGonagall was never soft. In the books, she was stern and brilliant, able to silence a room with a glance. She could transfigure her desk into a pig and turn back with a flick of her wand. When Umbridge tried to boss her, McGonagall's response was ice cold. "I should have made my meaning plainer," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut. But even with all that power, Rowling kept her restrained. She fought in the Battle of Hogwarts, but shared her work with others, a general among many. The film version decided McGonagall deserved the spotlight. In Deathly Hallows Part 2, her confrontation with Severus Snape became a duel of thunder and flame. Sparks rained across the Great Hall as she advanced. Snape's curses bounced off her shields in fiery explosions. She did not hesitate. She drove him back with relentless power until he chose to escape. The students watched in awe. She was no longer just their teacher. She was their defender. When Voldemort's forces gathered outside the castle, McGonagall didn't falter. She walked onto the battlements and lifted her wand. "Per totem locomotor!" she cried, voice shaking with excitement. The stone knights lining the walls groaned to life, clanking their shields in salute. The camera lingered on her smile as she whispered, "I've always wanted to use that spell." In the book, the work was shared. Flitwick and Sprout helped charm the statues. The film chose to give the moment entirely to her. Number 8. Bellatrix Lestrange. Bellatrix Lestrange was always poison in velvet gloves. In the books, she tortured Alice and Frank Longbottom into madness, laughed at Sirius before he fell through the veil, and sneered at Harry with glittering eyes. Rowling wrote her as cruel and loyal to Voldemort, but she fought like any other Death Eater. Her spells were vicious but not unstoppable. She was dangerous because she was willing to do anything, not because she was unbeatable. The films turned her into something closer to a dark goddess of war. In Half-Blood Prince, she sets the burrow ablaze, twirling through the firelight like a witch from old nightmares. Her scream is a taunt and a challenge. She doesn't slink away when auras arrive, she revels in destruction. In Deathly Hallows Part 2, she faces Tonks, Kingsley and others at once. Her curse is rapid and precise. She hurls opponents aside with a flick of her wrist, the camera tracking her like a wild animal at bay. When she duels Molly Weasley, the film gives them a full battle. Bellatrix laughs, teeth bared, sparks flying from her wand. "Not my daughter, you bitch," Molly roars, but Bellatrix doesn't back away. She parries, grins, fires killing curses with deadly glee. The moment crackles with fury. In the book it is fierce but brief. Rowling writes, Bellatrix screamed as the curse hit her and she toppled, dead before she hit the floor. The film stretches it, letting viewers see Bellatrix's ferocity matched and finally broken. Helena Bonham Carter made her unforgettable. Black hair flying, eyes manic, voice dripping with mockery. She turned Bellatrix into Voldemort's most terrifying lieutenant, not just because she was cruel, but because she could fight nearly anyone and win. Watching her cast felt like watching chaos given human shape, and the movies never let you forget how much you should fear her. Number 9. Neville Longbottom. Neville Longbottom began as the boy who lost his toad. In Philosopher's Stone he trembled as he said, "I'll fight you," blocking Harry, Ron and Hermione in the Gryffindor common room. His bravery was clumsy, born of loyalty more than skill. Throughout the books, Rowling showed us a quiet transformation. By Deathly Hallows, Neville had defied Death Eaters at Hogwarts, but his heroics unfolded in chaotic battle lines, hidden in the fog of curses and screams. The film chose to shine a bright light on that courage. In Deathly Hallows Part 2, Neville stands before Voldemort's army. His face is bloodied, his clothes burned. He grips the sword of Gryffindor and says with raw defiance, "I'll join you when hell freezes over." The words crack through the silence. Even Voldemort seems amused before the laughter dies. The camera holds on Neville's eyes, wide with fear, but shining with stubborn fire. When the fighting erupts again, the audience follows Neville as he chases Nagini. The snake hisses, Voldemort screams for someone to protect it, and Neville swings the blade in one clean arc. Sparks fly. The headless body crashes to the ground. Everyone sees it happen. The film refuses to let this moment slip by unnoticed. It crowns Neville with the glory of the kill. In the book, Rowling gives him the same deed, but in the swirl of the final battle. It is there on the page. Neville cuts off the snake's head, but it happens almost as an aside. The film elevates him to legend. It transforms the shy, forgetful boy into the hero who strikes the final blow against a Dark Lord's last shield, proving that true Gryffindors don't need fame to be brave. Number 10. Lucius Malfoy. Lucius Malfoy was always the polished schemer in the books. He wore expensive robes and chose his words like daggers. In Chamber of Secrets, Rowling describes him sneering, "Let us hope that Mr. Potter will always be around to save the day." He threatened with money and influence, never with wand in hand. He preferred the shadows of the ministry, where a well-placed whisper did more damage than any curse. But in the film version, he was a man who didn't hesitate to draw his wand. At the end of Chamber of Secrets, Lucius corners Harry near Dumbledore's office. His voice is low and dangerous. He begins to mutter Avada before Dobby interrupts him. That moment doesn't exist in the book. There, Lucius leaves the office fuming but silent, too clever to risk Azkaban by attacking a child in Hogwarts itself. Jason Isaacs brought menace that was physical, not just political. Lucius' cold fury simmered in every line of his face. He seemed capable of murder with just a flick of his cane. Even in Order of the Phoenix, the movie gives him a more commanding role in the battle at the Department of Mysteries. He strides forward among the Death Eaters, barking orders, his hair falling in elegant silver curtains as he duels against Harry's friends. He wasn't just a schemer anymore. The film made Lucius a real threat, one who would kill if provoked. His power was no longer limited to backroom deals. It glared in his eyes, crackled at the tip of his wand, and made the audience believe that behind the aristocratic sneer was a man willing to destroy anyone who defied him. Number 11. Remus Lupin. Remus Lupin was always the quiet strength of the Order. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, he sits by the fire in the shrieking shack, voice low as he tells Harry, "I trusted you, and all this time you've been his friend." He is calm, even when revealing Peter Pettigrew's betrayal. The books show him as wise, reserved. His duels are rare. His power feels like something he holds back. But the films let him loose. In Order of the Phoenix, Lupin storms the Department of Mysteries with Sirius Black and Kingsley Shacklebolt. He doesn't hang back. He fires curses in quick succession, blasting Death Eaters off their feet. When Bellatrix Lestrange kills Sirius, Lupin's scream is raw. He drags Harry back, fighting him while spells crash around them. It is violent, messy. He becomes not just a teacher, but a soldier. The ministry scene feels alive with danger. Lupin shields Harry with his own body, wand flashing. He shouts incantations, eyes scanning for threats. Unlike the book, where Rowling describes the Order's arrival in a few lines, there was a flash of light and Lupin's voice shouted, "Petrificus totalis." The film makes you see how practiced he is. He moves like a man who has survived countless ambushes. In these moments, the film builds the Lupin the books only hint at, a werewolf who is also a father, a friend, a fighter. The fear he carries for his condition turns into fury on the battlefield. He isn't just a gentle professor warning Harry about boggarts. He is a warrior, unwilling to let the darkness take those he loves. Number 12. Fleur Delacour. Fleur Delacour in the books is often described as breathtakingly beautiful, a part-veler whose allure turns heads everywhere she goes. Yet beyond that, her power is left largely implied, not shown. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, she is a Triwizard champion, but J.K. Rowling writes that she was the last to reach her sister during the second task, making her seem hesitant and less sure of herself. Readers see her pride and spirit, but rarely her courage in battle. The films refuse to let her be just decorative. In Deathly Hallows Part 1, Fleur stands beside Bill Weasley at their wedding in defiance of Voldemort's growing terror. When the Snatchers attack the Burrow, she's no passive victim but a part of the Order's frantic defense. You can see her fierce loyalty when she says Harry will be safe with us, not a boast, but a vow. She fights for Harry like family, refusing to back down even when darkness closes in. Even more striking is the Seven Potters scene, where Fleur drinks Polyjuice potion to become Harry. She doesn't flinch at the plan's dangers. In the book, she does it too, but it's more rushed. I've been chosen by the Order, I will do E.T. The film lets her show raw determination in her eyes. She's not a damsel. She's a soldier taking on Harry's fate. The fear that flickers is met by iron resolve. At Hogwarts itself during the final battle, her presence adds quiet strength. Though not shown in detail, the camera captures her among the defenders, wand raised, protecting those she loves. It changes everything about her image. She's no longer just the beautiful bride from the wedding scene, but a witch ready to stand in the front lines. Fleur Delacour transforms from an implied talent into a real, brave warrior. A reminder that love for her was always a reason to fight. Number 13. Sirius Black. Sirius Black's presence in the Harry Potter books is magnetic, yet strangely muted when it comes to raw magical power. He appears first in Prisoner of Azkaban as a half-mad fugitive, starved and skeletal, with hollow eyes that hold years of pain. Rowling paints a man broken by Azkaban's cold embrace, scarred by Dementor-induced trauma, and above all, filled with an unquenchable fury at Peter Pettigrew. "He's been in Azkaban for 12 years, Lupin says, with an edge of pity that seems to define how the books view Sirius. A man whose brilliance has been blunted by tragedy, a dog pacing in a cage of regret. Yet in the films, particularly the fifth, he explodes onto the screen with raw, unflinching magical talent, suggesting a power and combat readiness never quite seen in the text. In the Order of the Phoenix book, Sirius is trapped in Grimmauld Place, a restive, angry figure raging against his forced confinement. Harry notes his godfather's longing for danger, for movement, for freedom. When the rescue at the Ministry is planned, Sirius defies orders to stay behind, but his dueling is described in only the most minimal terms. Rowling gives us generalities like jets of light flew and Sirius was fighting Bellatrix, but the prose offers no real sense that Sirius is dominating the battle. There is no suggestion he is a duelist to rival Dumbledore or even Voldemort's top lieutenants. Instead, he is there, brave, but not invulnerable, undone, in the end, by a single curse. Contrast that with David Yates's Order of the Phoenix film, where Gary Oldman's Sirius becomes a ferocious, dashing hero in the heart of the Ministry of Magic. Every movement is laced with deft confidence. He fires spells with a snap of his wand, blocks curses with fluid ease, and lands hexes that send Death Eaters sprawling. The camera lingers on his smirk as he trades banter with Harry, even while dueling for his life. When he calls Harry "Nice one, James," it is less a tender moment than a crowning act of cinematic bravado, a man so sure of his strength that he can afford to be sentimental in battle. It transforms him from a tragic exile into a true wizarding warrior. In the book, The duel with Bellatrix Lestrange ends almost without warning. Sirius was laughing at her. "Come on, you can do better than that," he yelled, his voice echoing around the cavernous room. The second jet of light hit him squarely on the chest. It is devastating because it feels so sudden, so avoidable, and Sirius's laughter reads as arrogance unbacked by overwhelming skill. He isn't described casting advanced counter-curses or matching her blow for blow. Instead, he taunts and dies, falling through the veil before Harry can even process it. This grim efficiency serves Rowling's theme of sudden loss, but does Sirius no favours as a master duelist. In contrast, the film stages their duel as a balletic, brutal exchange of curses and blocks, with Bellatrix retreating before his relentless assault. They fight across the dais, their wands blazing, their faces twisted in the heat of combat. Sirius looks almost untouchable, an apex predator among Death Eaters. He isn't simply taunting, he's pressing her, forcing her to defend herself, showing off the kind of dark defensive magic one would expect from a man who's spent his youth fighting Voldemort's followers. This visual spectacle rewrites his legacy for viewers, no longer just a haunted man, but a formidable weapon for the Order. The difference matters because the books repeatedly highlight Sirius's reckless side, but rarely show him as truly powerful. He was brilliant at school, of course, with Lupin recalling, "He was the cleverest of us all." Yet in Grimmauld Place, he is all bitterness, too often drunk and itching for violence. His spells in Goblet of Fire, when he writes to Harry, are simple, incendio, apparitium. There is no canonical moment where we see him duel on even footing with another skilled witch or wizard. He is defined more by his dangerous reputation and volatile personality than by demonstrated magical skill. But cinema thrives on spectacle, and David Yates made sure viewers would see Sirius as a spell-slinging legend. Gary Oldman plays him as a gunslinger, wand held low, spellfire crackling with dangerous ease. Even his movement is aggressive, yet controlled. During the Ministry fight, he pivots and fires with precision, shielding Harry from Dolohov's lethal hexes. Every second of screen time insists that Sirius is not simply brave or defiant, but technically lethal. The choreography turns what was an off-page scuffle in the book into an iconic moment of wizarding warfare. This elevation makes his death in the film far more devastating. Viewers don't see a man cut down by overconfidence, but a warrior blindsided by fate. The camera gives us his half grin as he spars with Bellatrix. He has the upper hand, she is on the run. And then his expression shifts in an instant as the curse hits. There is a sickening silence as he falls into the veil. Unlike the book, where his laughter can be read as foolish, the film's staging feels like a cosmic betrayal, robbing the Order of its most dynamic fighter at the worst possible moment. In the books, Sirius's tragedy is his inability to grow beyond the trauma of Azkaban. Rowling says he is the last of the Blacks in more ways than one, a man stuck in a past of aristocratic cruelty, vengeful and restless. Harry sees a father figure who is also a cautionary tale, someone who refuses to live in the present. "You are not your father," Dumbledore warns Harry. And in that line, Sirius is a symbol of the danger of nostalgia. The novels emphasize that his impulsiveness is a fatal flaw, not a heroic asset. Number 14, Fenrir Greyback. Fenrir Greyback in the pages of J.K. Rowling's novels was a shadow that haunted every mention of werewolves in the wizarding world, a bogeyman mothers threatened disobedient wizard children with, and a monster who delighted in the terror he spread even more than the act of killing itself. When Remus Lupin describes him in Half-Blood Prince, he is specific in his dread. Fenrir Greyback, he's the most savage werewolf alive today. He likes biting children. He plans it so they'll be infected young, to raise them away from their parents, to turn them into killers. The words are chilling, conjuring the image of a patient, sadistic predator who takes pleasure in destroying families. but Rowling gives us few direct images of the blood and gore itself. Instead, Greyback is a nightmare best imagined, living in the margins of the page, made more frightening by the uncertainty of when he might appear and what he might do. It is in this subtlety that the books excel at psychological horror, presenting Greyback not as a snarling beast constantly on the prowl, but as a calculating, twisted human who uses his condition like a weapon. When he appears during the attack on Hogwarts at the end of Half-Blood Prince, Rowling describes a scene that is horrifying precisely because it is brief and incomplete. Bill Weasley is mauled, his face savaged, but the text cuts away before describing the gore in detail. Rowling writes, "Bill's face, no, please, no," and we see only the aftermath through other characters' shocked reactions. This leaves readers to imagine the true horror. Greyback is a force of corruption more than destruction, a threat to innocence, a corrupter of children who infects the next generation with his own violence and bloodlust. But when the movies adapted this presence for the screen, they understood that cinema demands different kinds of fear. The movies cannot rely on whispered rumors or implied savagery alone. David Thewlis's Remus Lupin can tell Harry about Fenrir Greyback all he wants, but to make viewers really feel it, the films show Greyback as a looming, animalistic figure with a face that is half wild even in human form, matted hair, filthy claws and teeth always bared in a bestial snarl. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, he is unmistakable on screen as the leader of the group that burns the burrow in the movie-only scene, where he chases Harry and Ginny through the reeds, breathing like a predator, suggesting he might bite even without the full moon. This was not in the book at all. The filmmakers added it to give Greyback a more active, physical menace. The film's Greyback is more than a psychological threat. He is a physical monster, a horror movie villain inserted into the fantasy war. When we see him in Deathly Hallows Part 1, he leads a snatcher gang across the countryside, hunting Harry, Ron, and Hermione like prey. He is more than just a name whispered with terror. He is on screen, snarling, delighted at the scent of blood. When Hermione uses a stinging hex to distort Harry's face so the snatchers won't recognize him, Greyback is the one who smells something off about the boy. In the books, this scene is sinister but quick. Rowling writes, "Harry saw the werewolf's pale eyes narrowing." In the film it stretched, the tension in Greyback's voice heavy with hunger. His suspicion felt like claws scraping on a door. He is the alpha, terrifying even among brutal bounty hunters. Another striking difference is how the movies transform the Battle of Hogwarts in Deathly Hallows Part 2 into a visceral spectacle in which Greyback is no longer lurking on the fringes but charging headlong into the fight. In the books, he is described attacking Lavender Brown. Fenrir Greyback was on top of her, and Harry saw the twitching of her limbs and the blood around her neck. The words are horrifying but brief, leaving it to the reader to imagine. In the film, however, he is shown dragging her limp, bloodied body like a trophy, his mouth covered in gore, before being blasted away by Hermione and Trelawney's spells. There is nothing subtle about it. He is an apex predator let loose in the castle, a visual confirmation of everything Lupin warned Harry about in Half-Blood Prince. In these film moments, Greyback isn't just a dark shape at the edge of the battlefield. He is a literal monster tearing through the defenders of Hogwarts. His role in the battle expands far beyond Rowling's text. The film makes him not simply an example of the Death Eaters' cruelty, but a monstrous champion of their cause, the unholy terror they unleash deliberately to break the defenders' spirits. It is storytelling by action rather than implication. And though some readers might prefer the subtlety of the books, there's no denying the movies made Greyback far more active, more present, and more obviously deadly. Even in design, the movies refuse to let you forget he is not a normal wizard. In the books, there is no extended description of Greyback's human form beyond the grimy beard and sharp teeth. Rowling writes that he tries to look wolfish even when human, but it is largely up to the reader to imagine what that means. The films, by contrast, make choices for us. He is covered in grime and scars, with ragged clothes that look like they're about to burst at the seams. He moves with a loping, unnatural gait. His voice is guttural, his breathing feral. Actor Dave Lagino's performance turns him into a horror villain in the style of classic werewolf cinema, immediately identifiable, immediately threatening. Number 15, Grindelwald, cameo in the finale. In the dim, flickering light of Nurmengard, the old wizard sits alone, imprisoned for decades in a fortress he once ruled. In J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, this is the Grindelwald we see, thin, aged, defeated, with skin like parchment and mad, staring eyes. When Voldemort confronts him about the Elder Wand, Grindelwald in the book seems almost a broken relic of history, able only to deny Voldemort scornfully, but with no fire left. "Kill me then," he spits, but there's little sense of grandeur or cunning left, only the echo of the feared dark wizard he once was. He seems resigned, perhaps even remorseful, but his power is absent, lost. With the years and the battles he waged and lost. But in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, the film takes a different approach with this fleeting scene. There is a strange, unsettling dignity in Jamie Campbell Bower's performance, even in old age. When Voldemort invades Nurmengard, Grindelwald does not appear frail or cowardly. He meets Voldemort's piercing gaze with a cold, clear stare, his words deliberate and steady. There is a sense of challenge in his refusal to betray Dumbledore's secret. He speaks as a man who knows exactly what Voldemort is and will not kneel to it. In this cinematic moment, Grindelwald is stronger, fiercer, and far more magnetic than the withered old prisoner described in Rowling's text. The film gives Grindelwald a kind of bitter grandeur, refusing to cower before the new Dark Lord. The lighting is stark but dignified, shadows cut across his lined face, and his voice carries weight even as he denies Voldemort what he wants. The line, "You will not find it here," comes out with an authority that suggests defiance, not merely despair. It is not just a lie to protect the Elder Wand's resting place, but a final assertion of control over Voldemort's quest. This is the mark of someone who, even in chains, retains a sliver of power over the future. The camera lingers on the set of Grindelwald's mouth and the glint in his eyes, making sure viewers know he is not defeated in spirit. In the book, Voldemort sees Grindelwald's defiance as worthless. He murders him without hesitation, seeing him as just another obstacle. But the film implies a very different tension. Grindelwald's refusal infuriates Voldemort because it exposes the limits of fear. The old wizard's scorn reminds Voldemort that some enemies will never kneel, and that his threats have boundaries. In this sense, Grindelwald becomes a mirror for Dumbledore's own stance against Voldemort, unyielding even when cornered. The movie's choice elevates Grindelwald's last stand into something noble, if doomed, and gives him a kind of moral victory absent in the text. This change does not come from nowhere. Throughout the Fantastic Beasts series, Warner Brothers had already invested in building Grindelwald up as a truly compelling villain. By Deathly Hallows Part 1, audiences were primed to see him as a fallen titan, not just a footnote in Voldemort's rise. The film uses his cameo to pay off that investment. It gives the audience one final chilling reminder of who this man was, the one wizard who came closest to overthrowing the magical world's order before Voldemort. Even aged and jailed, he is dangerous because he still refuses to serve anyone else's vision of power. Rowling's text gives Grindelwald a line that suggests the tiniest spark of remorse. "Kill me then, Voldemort. I welcome death, but my death will not bring you what you seek. There is so much you do not understand." These words read as a final riddle, but also as a broken old man's grim satisfaction at outwitting Voldemort one last time. The film sharpens this into something prouder. There is no trembling in Grindelwald's voice, no self-pity. He looks Voldemort in the eyes and defies him, making clear he will not be used to desecrate Dumbledore's grave or memory. In this way, the film's Grindelwald resembles the villains of classical tragedy, defeated but unbowed, punished but still proud. He is like Milton's Lucifer saying, "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." The audience sees a fallen emperor of dark magic still aware of his own myth, determined to make Voldemort's victory hollow by refusing him what he wants. This is storytelling that adds depth, because it gives Grindelwald an arc that ends with deliberate moral choice. He does not repent in the Christian sense, but he does refuse to further the cause of evil he recognizes in Voldemort. Visually, the film also does subtle work to make Grindelwald seem more dangerous. Nurmengard's prison is not presented as a rotting ruin, but as a grim, ordered fortress. Grindelwald himself looks worn but commanding, with stark lighting accentuating the scars of age as trophies rather than deformities. When he rises to speak to Voldemort, he does not cower or shrink. Instead, he stands as if he is still the master of the place, even if his guards have left him to rot. This staging makes it clear he is a prisoner of walls, not of spirit. By contrast, the book's Grindelwald is described as having a face ravaged by time and hate, a madman whose power is gone. Rowling's lines emphasize decay. He looked like a corpse with mad, staring eyes. It is a haunting but pitiful image, not a threatening one. The cinematic Grindelwald rejects this. He remains sly, charismatic, and powerful, even in failure. His authority is undimmed by age, suggesting that true menace lies not only in magic, but in unbreakable will. There's also a sense in the film that Grindelwald, in denying Voldemort, finds one last opportunity to harm his rival's ambitions. His refusal is strategic, not merely spiteful. He knows Voldemort will kill him, but also knows that sending him to Dumbledore's grave is a cruelty he will not permit. He guards that final secret with a warrior's discipline. The film makes this a climactic moment, an act of sacrifice that grants Grindelwald some measure of redemption without ever sanitizing his past. He remains monstrous, but also strangely admirable. Number 16, Molly Weasley. Molly Weasley was always the warm, bustling centre of the burrow, a mother of 7 whose priority was keeping the family fed, clothed and loved, but the books let us see her largely in the kitchen, scolding Fred and George or worrying over letters from Hogwarts. Even when Harry first met her on platform 9 3/4, she fussed over him like a surrogate mother but never hinted at any fearsome magical power. She was the embodiment of care, not of combat, and so much of her presence was built on making the burrow a safe place away from the encroaching darkness. When Arthur was attacked by Nagini in the Department of Mysteries, Molly's role was emotional. She was devastated and frantic, but not depicted as a duelist or strategist. She belonged to the Order of the Phoenix, but we rarely saw her contribution to its warfare. There is a moment in the book Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix that hints at a darker, stronger side of Molly, but even that moment is private and internal. It's when she faces her boggart in Grimmauld Place, which morphs into the corpses of her family. Harry watches as she sobs, her wand falling from her fingers, utterly powerless in the face of her fear. Ridiculous, she tries, but she cannot manage it. Lupin has to help her. It is a gut-wrenching scene that shows the depth of her love and fear, but it also shows her limits as a combatant. She is a mother first, last, and always, and the scene deliberately highlights her vulnerability, not her skill. It's poignant, but in no way suggests that she is a battle-ready witch who can go toe-to-toe with Bellatrix Lestrange. Throughout the books, Molly is mentioned as part of the Order of the Phoenix, but J.K. Rowling keeps her actions in the background. She hosts meetings at the Burrow or at Grimmauld Place, manages supplies, and takes care of everyone's injuries or worries. We see Mad-Eye Moody, Lupin, Tonks, and Kingsley Shacklebolt as the real front-line fighters. Molly is the backbone, but her magic is domestic, denoming the garden, washing dishes with a flick of her wand, conjuring a meal for 12 in minutes. There is power in that, of course. Nobody disputes her competence, but it's not the cinematic dueling power that the films ultimately assign to her. When the final battle arrives in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the book describes Molly's confrontation with Bellatrix in a very short, almost abrupt way. It's powerful precisely because it's so shocking and fast. After Bellatrix narrowly misses Ginny with a killing curse, Molly explodes with rage. Rowling writes, Molly's curse soared beneath Bellatrix's outstretched arm and hit her squarely in the chest, directly over her heart. Bellatrix falls down dead. It's a clean, surgical kill, a moment of decisive maternal fury. But there is no extended, spectacular duel. It's over in seconds. The text says, Molly fought like a woman possessed, but it leaves much of the actual magic described, compressing the emotional force into a single lethal blow. The effect in prose is haunting. Molly is terrifying because she is absolutely focused, not because she is shown as a long-trained warrior. The film version of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 does something very different with this scene, expanding it into a show-stopping set-piece that transforms Molly from a nurturing matron into a fierce, almost primal champion. The duel becomes a whirling dance of deadly energy, spell after spell. Molly's face is twisted with determination and rage. She blocks Bellatrix's attacks with furious precision, hurling retaliatory curses that spark and shatter around them. In this interpretation, she doesn't just cast one decisive killing curse, she overpowers Bellatrix in an extended battle that showcases both her raw magical strength and her unbreakable will to protect her daughter. This change isn't a small embellishment. It fundamentally shifts our perception of Molly Weasley as a witch. In the book, her victory is a moment of maternal instinct weaponized to lethal effect, like a mother bear's swipe that instantly kills. In the film, however, it's a sustained exhibition of magical skill. Audiences see her not only as angry but as tactically superior, able to withstand and outmaneuver Bellatrix Lestrange, who was built up throughout the series as one of Voldemort's most formidable and sadistic lieutenants. This is no lucky shot or moment of adrenaline. It's an earned, believable victory against a duelist who killed Sirius Black and tortured Neville Longbottom's parents into madness. Bellatrix in the films is portrayed by Helena Bonham Carter as unhinged, feral, and terrifyingly skilled. She cackles as she fights, exuding a predatory glee. When Molly steps up in the movie, it's not to deliver one line and one killing blow, but to match Bellatrix blow for blow, demonstrating not just maternal rage, but deep competence. This transformation of the scene gives viewers a very different idea of who Molly Weasley is. She is not just a protective mother who will kill if forced. She is a mother who can fight anyone if they threaten her child, and win through sheer magical mastery. Even the iconic line, "Not my daughter, you bitch," lands differently in the film. In the book, it is a scream of maternal rage that precedes the fatal curse. In the movie, it is delivered with icy venom as Molly circles Bellatrix, raising the stakes of the encounter. She doesn't break down or collapse. She stands unshakable, wand at the ready. The camera frames her like a warrior queen defending her child, with the rest of the battle falling away as the duel becomes the centerpiece. It is an empowering moment that redefines her entire character for many viewers. The filmmakers clearly wanted Molly to have a moment of unambiguous triumph that was visually spectacular. The choice is understandable in cinematic terms. The final battle is a riot of curses, explosions, giants, and duels, and it would have felt anticlimactic if Bellatrix, arguably the most personally loathsome Death Eater still alive, had fallen after a single, quick exchange. Expanding the duel let them emphasize that even the most caring, domestic character in the series could be terrifying when her family was on the line. It turns Molly into a symbol of the idea that motherhood itself is a kind of ferocity. This reinterpretation also serves as a thematic counterpoint to Bellatrix. Bellatrix is obsessed with Voldemort, twisted by devotion, childless but fiercely loyal to her master. She represents a perversion of loyalty and love. Molly's power in the film emerges from a purer, selfless love. By giving them a real duel, the film sets up a moral clash, as well as a magical one. It's not only a question of whose spell is faster, but whose motivation is stronger. The contrast makes the fight resonate on a symbolic level that the book's quick kill, though chilling, doesn't fully dramatize. Some book purists criticize this change, arguing that the suddenness of the book's version is what makes it powerful. Bellatrix is so overconfident that she doesn't see Molly coming. The fatal curse lands before she can even react. This interpretation emphasizes that underestimating a mother's love is a fatal mistake, but the film's choice to give Molly a protracted, dramatic duel arguably makes her victory more earned on screen. We actually watch her struggle and dominate, which cinema needs to convey power in a visual language. It's also telling that throughout the rest of the film series, Molly's magic was shown as competent but unspectacular. She scolds Fred and George, cleans with her wand, fusses over knitting. Her only glimpse of true power before the final battle is in Chamber of Secrets, when she rages at Arthur for enchanting the car. Her voice shakes the burrow, but it's all emotional, not magical. The final duel completely recontextualizes her. Viewers remember her less for conjuring gravy boats and more for firing lethal curses while her face is carved in fury. In fact, the choice to amplify Molly's power in the film makes her one of the few adult characters to get a genuine hero moment in the cinematic Battle of Hogwarts. Many others fight anonymously in the background or fall off screen. Kingsley Shacklebolt duels in flashes, Lupin and Tonks die off camera. Even Voldemort's defeat relies heavily on Harry's personal journey. Molly's duel is the one sequence that says, here is an adult witch, a mother facing the worst the Death Eaters can throw at her and destroying them. It elevates her from side character to one of the film's final act's highlights. The difference between book and film here is stark and revealing. The book allows you to read the power into Molly, to imagine the decades of training and the mother's wrath coalescing in one lethal spell, but the film shows it explicitly. There's no room for doubt about her abilities. She's terrifying in that scene, and for many viewers it permanently changes how they see her. She becomes a kind of hidden weapon in the Order of the Phoenix's ranks, someone you would never want to provoke. It also reflects a broader difference in how the series treats adult witches and wizards in film versus book. The books are written largely from Harry's perspective, which limits what we see of the adults fighting. We don't get detailed, blow-by-blow accounts of McGonagall or Kingsley's duels. Molly's kill is sudden because Harry isn't paying full attention, focused instead on Voldemort. The film is free to cut away to frame Molly like an action hero. This liberty lets the audience see her true potential in a way the book never does. Some readers even feel that the film's version is more satisfying because it corrects a perceived imbalance. Bellatrix was such a terrifying villain that killing her off-screen or with a single line of text felt unsatisfying to many. Seeing her undone in a savage duel makes the justice feel real. Molly becomes an avenger not only for Ginny but for Sirius, for the Longbottoms, for everyone Bellatrix ever tortured or murdered. It's a moment of catharsis that the film uses to give the audience an emotional payoff. J.K. Rowling herself once described Molly as the archetypal mother, suggesting that her power comes from love. The film leans into this idea but makes sure we also see the lethal edge of that love. In the book, the threat is implied, its power hidden until the last second. In the film, it's a blazing, undeniable truth. You see the terror in Bellatrix's eyes as Molly gains the upper hand. It's not just a one-hit wonder, it's a sustained triumph of motherly vengeance over sadistic cruelty. This transformation of Molly Weasley from a background caretaker to a dueling powerhouse is one of the most striking examples in the series of a character who is much stronger in the film than in the book. It's a testament to how adaptation can change the perception of a character, making them resonate differently with audiences. It also shows how storytelling shifts across media, from prose's subtle suggestion to cinema's spectacle. Molly in the book is an avenging mother. Molly in the film is a warrior. And for many, that shift makes all the difference. Number 17. Death Eaters in general. They were the hidden dread in wizarding society, lurking behind whispers and warnings, a shadow that spread even when Voldemort fell. In the books, the Death Eaters were described as vicious fanatics whose crimes left lasting scars, yet their actual magical dueling prowess was often implied more than seen. The Ministry feared them, but the reader rarely witnessed them casting dazzling or intricate spells in the open. When Bellatrix Lestrange escaped Azkaban, for example, it was her reputation as a sadist and murderer that terrified people, not any cinematic display of overwhelming magical skill. J.K. Rowling wrote they were a motley collection, a mixture of the weak seeking protection, the ambitious seeking riches, the cruel seeking blood, and the fanatical seeking a cause, Half-Blood Prince. The complexity was there, but so too was a certain mundane brutality rather than epic spectacle. The films, however, chose a different path, forging them into something closer to a disciplined, mystical order of black-clad enforcers swirling with smoke, teleporting with dramatic flair, and casting destructive spells with ruthless precision. When they invaded the Ministry of Magic in Deathly Hallows Part 1, it was not just infiltration, but a cinematic coup featuring synchronized movements and coordinated attacks. They didn't simply threaten, they conquered with billowing black smoke, trailing behind them like the wings of war itself. Their arrival on screen announced a nightmare realized, a sudden storm overtaking the false calm of the wizarding world. Consider the wedding of Bill Weasley and Fleur Delacour. In the book, the attack is chaotic and fearsome in implication, but remains mostly off-page in its specifics. The warning from Kingsley Shacklebolt Patronus, "The Ministry has fallen, Scrimgeour is dead, they are coming," breaks the air like a death knell. Harry grabs Hermione and Ron, they disapparate, and the details of the attack are described later in Rumour and Aftermath. The fear is palpable, but the actual fight is not front and centre. It is the terror of collapse, not the terror of immediate spectacle. By contrast, the movie transforms that moment into a spectacular siege. Black-robed Death Eaters crash the wedding in a blast of black smoke. Guests scream and scatter as hexes fly, tables shatter, and bright streaks of curses collide mid-air. The camera follows the panicked rush, showing them as disciplined hunters systematically attacking and scattering the Order's friends. It's an apocalyptic visual that cements them as Voldemort's true army, rather than scattered terrorists. In that moment, they are the embodiment of magical fascism in coordinated action, an army of terror rather than a gang of criminals. In the books, even when the Death Eaters are shown dueling, they often rely on fear and intimidation rather than demonstrably superior magical skill. During the Battle of the Department of Mysteries in Order of the Phoenix, they have numbers and cruelty on their side, but the fight with Dumbledore's army is messy and chaotic. There's fear, but not overwhelming tactical superiority. Harry notes that Bellatrix is frighteningly fast, but the rest are less individually terrifying. Rowling describes it as chaos. Jets of light flew in every direction. Harry saw Lupin, Tonks and Kingsley dueling Bellatrix and a masked Death Eater. It is a swirl of conflict where the Death Eater's deadliness is real, but not cinematic. The films elevate that same battle into a balletic dance of lethal spellwork. Death Eaters swirl and spin in black smoke, dodging attacks with graceful, inhuman movements. They cast wide-area curses that smash walls and knock aside multiple opponents. The duel between Dumbledore and Voldemort is, of course, the highlight, but even the supporting Death Eaters are shown blasting and deflecting with cinematic precision. It turns a violent scuffle into a magical war. The transformation is one of scale and style. The films make them worthy of fear not only by reputation but by overwhelming visual might. A particularly striking example is Fenrir Greyback. In the book, he is described as savage and sadistic, licking blood from his fingers, reveling in fear. He is dangerous, yes, but much of that danger is psychological and hinted at, built on horror movie suspense rather than direct action. Rowling writes in Half-Blood Prince, Fenrir Greyback, the werewolf who specialized in children, his matted grey hair, his filthy teeth, the red gleam of bloodlust in his eyes. He is a monster in man's shape, but the horror is personal and grisly rather than military. The movies, in contrast, turn Greyback into an unstoppable force during the Battle of the Astronomy Tower. He leaps through flames, howls with savage triumph, and slashes Bill Weasley's face in a cinematic, slow-motion horror shot. He is not just a lurking menace, but an action villain brute, moving with speed and fury that sells his animalistic strength. In this way, the film crafts a more immediately threatening foe, no longer a boogeyman of whispered threats, but a present, muscular horror who fights as part of Voldemort's Black Ops squad. Even their methods of transportation in the films became an iconic sign of their elevated threat. The smoky black disapparition-apparition effect was invented for the movies, giving them an almost demonic, supernatural presence. When they attack Diagon Alley in Half-Blood Prince, the screen shows this swirling darkness consuming the street, dragging Ollivander away like prey. In the book, Harry learns only later what happened, the dread coming from knowledge of the crime. The movie gives that dread form, showing Death Eaters hunting and abducting with predatory glee, using the visual language of horror to sell their menace. Another significant difference lies in the Ministry infiltration in Deathly Hallows. In the book, it is careful and tense, but largely played as infiltration with minimal violence in the moment. The trio uses Polyjuice Potion to sneak about, fearing detection, but the Death Eater control is more bureaucratic. They've seized power, yes, but they are the new Ministry, enforcing bigotry through policy and fear. The terror is the banality of evil. Interviews, interrogations, a courtroom scene where Umbridge asks for papers and blood status. Harry and Hermione stun or disarm people quickly, racing for escape. The threat is chilling, but administrative. The film, however, stages this as a brutal police state with Death Eaters moving like black-clad shock troops. When the infiltration fails, the chase erupts in the hallways, spells cracking walls, Death Eaters bursting from fireplaces in clouds of smoke. The effect is militaristic. They are not merely thugs in masks, but elite stormtroopers enforcing Voldemort's regime. The scale of their threat is expanded from oppressive bureaucracy to lethal, fast-moving squads that can chase and kill on command. Bellatrix Lestrange is perhaps the best individual example of this power-up. In the books, she is indeed dangerous. She kills Sirius Black with a well-placed curse and is described as quick, skilled, and insane. Harry notes her as the worst of them, and she stands out for her cruelty and enthusiasm for torture. Rowling writes, "The Dark Lord will rise again, sissy, and the world will be cleansed of mudblood filth." Her fanaticism is central, but the actual spell work is rarely described in cinematic detail. The horror is psychological. She taunts Harry over Sirius's death and later tortures Hermione for information. In the movies, Bellatrix becomes Voldemort's deadliest general, a witch of terrifying magical skill. Helena Bonham Carter's performance is feral and magnetic, but it is the choreography that truly redefines her power. In Order of the Phoenix, she struts out of Azkaban like a dark queen cackling. At the Department of Mysteries, she is not just dangerous, she duels multiple opponents, evading spells with swirling grace. The camera follows her like a force of nature. The duel in Malfoy Manor where she tortures Hermione becomes an intense scene of unbridled violence and psychological horror, pushing the fear she represents beyond what is written on the page. Rowling's text suggests Voldemort's followers as a collection of fanatics, some more talented than others, many relying on intimidation. In Half-Blood Prince, Snape observes that many joined out of fear or opportunism. The movie simplifies and concentrates that threat into an almost paramilitary group. This is most obvious during the attack on Hogwarts in Deathly Hallows Part 2. The book battle is huge and chaotic, with Death Eaters dueling students and staff in the hallways and courtyards. It is a siege, but described in many viewpoints with emphasis on the personal horror: Colin Creevey's death, Fred Weasley's fall, Remus and Tonks lying together. The film stages it as an epic war sequence. Death Eaters rain curses on the protective shield like artillery, blowing holes in the walls. Giants crash through defences. Voldemort's lieutenants stalk the ruined grounds in black smoke, cutting down defenders. The sense of coordinated assault is unmistakable. This is no longer just a scattered cult, but an organized army with siege tactics. The visual language of war transforms them into a threat on par with any cinematic, dark empire. Even the unforgivable curses showcase this difference. In the books, Death Eaters use them readily, but there is often less spectacle. They are terrifying for their moral depravity, using Cruciatus or killing curses in cold blood. Harry himself tries the Cruciatus curse on Bellatrix in Order of the Phoenix, but fails because he lacks true hatred. The fear is in the knowledge that the Death Eaters will use them without remorse, not in flashy dueling. Rowling builds dread through moral horror rather than special effects. On screen, those curses become cinematic signatures. Green jets of light cut the air like laser blasts. Cruciatus curses fling victims with force. Sectum Sempra spills blood with shocking visual flair. The Death Eaters wield these with precision and spectacle, reinforcing them as battle-hardened elite rather than simply sadistic criminals. It turns every duel into a deadly dance, selling the audience on their threat in a way that words alone cannot. The sense of unity among Death Eaters is also exaggerated in the movies. In the books, Voldemort's followers are fractious, motivated by fear and self-interest. Many desert after his fall. Narcissa lies to him about Harry's death to save Draco. Snape is a double agent who hates Voldemort. Rowling's text suggests a brittle, toxic hierarchy, full of betrayal. Yet the films show them lining up in perfect black formations, moving as one, apparating in columns of smoke, giving the impression of almost military discipline. That change in portrayal serves the cinematic goal of making Voldemort's power more credible. A Dark Lord who commands squabbling cowards would not threaten Hogwarts so completely, but one with a disciplined legion of black-clad, smoke-trailing, curse-hurling enforcers, that sells the stakes of the final battle in a single image. The audience knows that if Harry fails, this is the future, a world ruled by a magical Gestapo. Ultimately, the Death Eaters of the films are a carefully designed escalation, transforming Rowling's vision of a terrorist cell into a full-fledged magical army. They are not merely background criminals, but the physical manifestation of Voldemort's fascist vision, a black-clad legion enforcing blood purity with spells and fear. Their power in the movies is not subtle or implied. It is immediate, explosive, and terrifyingly organized. The choice to amplify their threat reshapes the entire tone of the story, making the war in the wizarding world feel like a true clash of armies, not just a battle of ideologies. Number 18, Peter Pettigrew. In the world of Harry Potter, Peter Pettigrew is remembered as the weakest link, the betrayer, the coward who sold out his friends to Voldemort. The books portray him as a pitiful, trembling man who can barely defend himself, and even when given the chance to prove his worth to his master, he fails spectacularly. Rowling shows him whimpering on the floor, pleading for mercy, his silver hand eventually turning against him. But the films offered a darker, sharper edge. In Alfonso Cuarón's Prisoner of Azkaban, Peter emerges not as a helpless worm, but as a dangerous, skittering threat, something that is hard to pin down and extinguish despite his pathetic motives. It's in the flick of his wand, the speed of his transformations, the beady alertness in Timothy Spall's eyes that he seems just slippery enough to make you realize why Voldemort would value him. He doesn't become a mighty duelist, but he's no longer the utterly feeble, shrieking mess of the page. One of the starkest contrasts is the moment in the shrieking shack. In the book, he is described as practically groveling. He dropped to his knees. "Sirius, Sirius, what could I have done? The Dark Lord you have no idea about. He has weapons you can't imagine. I was scared." That line is drenched in terror. He's exposed, humiliated. He collapses psychologically the moment Sirius Black and Remus Lupin confront him, showing no real magical resistance. But the film shifts the mood when his animagus form is revealed. There's a burst of viciousness in his face. Even cornered, he moves with rodent-like agility, dodging Lupin's grasp, his wand movements twitchy but fast. He feels, for a moment, like a rabid animal fighting for survival. Instead of surrendering instantly, there's a second where you sense he might cast something dark, something fast, and you see Lupin and Sirius treating him like a real threat. Even his initial transformation back into human form in the shrieking shack becomes something unsettlingly physical and repulsive on screen. The bones crack, the flesh bubbles and shifts. He doesn't just pop out and cower, he emerges hunched and feral, glancing around with cunning eyes, calculating, ready to bolt. That slight change is critical. The book's Pettigrew is so psychologically broken that you wonder how he functioned at all as a Death Eater, even in Voldemort's degraded state. But the film's Pettigrew radiates a low-level menace that explains why Voldemort kept him close. He isn't loyal out of love, he's loyal out of terror and self-interest, but he's also willing to be dirty work incarnate. That makes him more dangerous because you can't rely on him to break so easily. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the film also gives Pettigrew's rat form more agency. Scabbers in the book is often sickly and inert, to the point that Ron barely notices when Crookshanks stalks him. Rowling describes him as thin and balding, weak and pathetic. Yet in the film he's wiry, frantic, hard to catch. There's one moment where he explodes out of Ron's grasp, skittering under floorboards, his squeals shrill with fear but also cunning. He's not some dying pet. He's a spy who knows exactly when to run. This heightened alertness sells his survival instincts, the instincts of someone who stayed alive for years under Dumbledore's nose, who escaped Voldemort's enemies while feeding him critical information. The films understand that a traitor that incompetent wouldn't last long, so they sharpened him just enough to make him plausible. This rat-like cunning carries over even after his allegiance is exposed. In the book, once he's unmasked, Pettigrew's usefulness is reduced to one final act: reviving Voldemort. He's never again shown as an intelligent or fast-reacting wizard. In fact, when confronted by Harry in the cellar at Malfoy Manor, he hesitates when Harry says, "You owe me," and that tiny moment of pity triggers his death. But in the films, even if that moment of mercy remains, there's a sense that Wormtail is quicker on the draw. He whips out his wand with sudden, snappy movements, eyes darting. He's still a coward, but the cowardice is flavoured with the paranoia of someone who might lash out if pushed. This difference is subtle but crucial. It tells us he's a rat cornered, small but ready to bite. Even the design of his silver hand in the Goblet of Fire movie makes him seem more lethal. In the book, it's described as a shining silver instrument given by Voldemort as a reward, cold and pitiless, but it's not shown in action until it kills its owner. In the film, the hand is heavy, metallic, with a terrifying grip, clicking and flexing with mechanical precision. When he uses it, it's not just a symbol of Voldemort's power. It's a weapon in its own right. He doesn't use it often on screen, but the visual language makes it clear that if he wanted to choke the life out of someone, he could do it in seconds. That's not the pathetic Peter from the page who can barely wave his wand without whimpering. When you watch Timothy Spall's performance, you see layers that don't exist in the book's more one-dimensional coward. His face is quivering with terror one moment, then flashing with rage or twisted glee the next. When he hisses to Sirius, you see the unrepentant traitor. But when he begs for his life, it's not simply pathetic, it's manipulative. He waits for the right moment to squirm free. This interpretation gives him a dangerous unpredictability. In the book, you know he'll cave. In the film, you're not sure. He's the friend who betrays you, then tries to kill you if you catch him, then pleads with you when cornered. That ambiguity makes him scarier. Another moment of difference is when he slices off his own hand to resurrect Voldemort. The book emphasizes the grotesque sacrifice, flesh of the servant, willingly given. But Peter's willingness is undercut by the terror in the prose. He's almost sobbing as he does it. In the movie, there's a cruel decisiveness. He doesn't hesitate long. The moment is played quickly, almost clinically. That subtle shift matters. It implies he's accepted what he is, Voldemort's creature. In the book, he's the reluctant tool. In the movie, he's the corrupted devotee who knows the price and pays it without delay because power terrifies him more than pain. It's important to see how these differences change how we interpret the character. In the books, he's so pathetic, you can't imagine why James, Sirius, and Remus let him in their circle at all. He was always hopeless at dueling, Sirius says in Order of the Phoenix. But the film's Pettigrew, while still being the weakest marauder, has a slippery intelligence and animal survival drive that would make him a useful spy. He's the kind of friend who makes himself indispensable, not through strength, but through cunning. The films seem to ask, how did this coward survive so long in Voldemort's service? And they answer it by showing him just dangerous enough to be useful. The Shrieking Shack scene is perhaps the best single example of this transformation. The tension is thick. The camera closes in on Peter's twitching face, his darting eyes. He tries to talk his way out, but there's always that suggestion he might try something else. Lupin and Sirius keep their wands on him the whole time, not because he's powerful, but because he's unpredictable. In the book, Harry is so disgusted he wants them to kill him then and there. Peter is nothing but slime. But in the film, there's a charged threat in the air. He's cornered prey, yes, but prey that will bite and infect you if you're not careful. This change gives the entire confrontation a darker, more morally ambiguous tone. Number 19, Bill Weasley. Bill Weasley in the books is introduced as the eldest, the curse breaker for Gringotts, the one with a ponytail and a fang earring, who brings a sense of cool competence to the Weasley clan. He's described as cool by his brothers, and J.K. Rowling paints him as a brave, experienced wizard who knows the dangers of ancient magic. Yet despite these promising traits, he fades somewhat into the background once his dramatic wounding by Fenrir Greyback happens. The books say Bill wasn't a werewolf, though Greyback's bite carried some contamination. He was scarred. But he becomes domestic, more subdued, a reminder of the war's cost. The tension shifts to other Weasleys, Fred and George with their shop, Percy's betrayal, Ron's friendship with Harry, leaving Bill often implied rather than shown in action. He's there at Shell Cottage, offering refuge, but the novel doesn't dwell on what it feels like for a cursebreaker turned host, his quiet strength mostly off-page. The films took that starting point but gave Bill more gravitas through subtle but effective moments. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, we see Bill physically present during the famous Seven Potters operation. He helps transport Harry to the Burrow, and even though it's a brief scene, the film grants it an urgency and camaraderie that emphasizes Bill's reliability. It's not just an offhand mention in a letter or a second-hand summary. He rides beside the Order of the Phoenix members as an equal, his scars visible but not defining him solely as a victim. He becomes part of the front line, suggesting experience in combat flying and the grim business of dueling Death Eaters in mid-air. In the book's wedding scene, Fleur declares, "I am beautiful enough for both of us." The novel gives us this moving line acknowledging Bill's injuries with grace. The movie, while briefer, stages it in the middle of wartime preparation, showing Fleur and Bill's unity as more than romantic fluff. Their partnership becomes a statement of adult, war-tested love. Even Bill's calm, serious expression as they host the wedding in a darkening world signals the role of a protector. He's no mere older brother cheering from the sidelines. He's the man who holds the safe house, who chooses to get married with Death Eaters on the march, emphasizing resilience rather than tragedy. Shell Cottage in the film, too, cements Bill's stronger, more active role. In the book, Harry describes it as a lonely and beautiful place where Dobby dies, where they recover before the Gringotts break in. Bill is there, but it's subdued. He's cautious, warning Harry about Goblin trust. The film heightens his leadership qualities. He's the one who speaks plainly about the risks, his voice authoritative, yet empathetic. He's not just giving hospitality, he's drawing battle lines, framing choices. Actor Domhnall Gleeson imbues him with a soldierly, steady resolve that makes him more than a helpful older brother. He's an Order of the Phoenix veteran offering hard truths to a hero on the run. The battle readiness in Bill's film version also contrasts powerfully with the quiet domestic recovery we see in the books after his mauling. The text says he was badly scarred, he had to get used to raw meat. The effect is tragic, almost pathos-inducing. Bill becomes an emblem of what Fenrir Greyback does to people, but he's sidelined from further fights. The movie version doesn't erase his trauma, it shows the scars, but it refuses to reduce him to them. He's clearly an operative, a man who kept fighting after his injuries. It's a subtle but meaningful shift that respects his toughness. When the Order gathers at the Burrow in the film before transporting Harry, Bill's presence matters in a way that the books imply, but don't dwell on. He stands among Mad-Eye, Kingsley, Lupin, and the twins without needing introduction or apology. He's equal rank, someone who knows the stakes. The movie makes visual what the book states in passing, that he's a Gringotts curse breaker, with experience in Egypt and ancient magic. He's not a liability because of his scars, nor just the oldest brother. He's the man you trust to help execute the riskiest mission of the war so far. The protective instincts the film shows Bill expressing toward his family also strengthen his role. The Burrow in Deathly Hallows Part 1 is visibly tense, with wards, secrecy, the sense of doom. Bill's steady demeanor grounds those scenes. He moves like someone always watching the perimeter. The books, while describing wards around Shell Cottage, rarely show Bill at work doing them. The film lets you see that soldierly side, the unspoken stress of defending loved ones while knowing what Fenrir did to him is out there waiting for another shot. He is made the Order's shield-bearer in spirit, even if no single scene spells it out. In many ways, the cinematic Bill becomes the Weasley, who best embodies the Order's wartime ideal. He's older than the twins, more mature than Ron, less conflicted than Percy. He's the calm in the storm. When he warns about goblins at Shell Cottage, it's not just helpful advice, it's field intelligence from a man who knows how betrayal works. The film lets his lines carry that weight, showing that he has seen duplicity and death in foreign tombs and at home alike. That context makes his role essential, even in quieter scenes. Consider also the tone of the wedding in the movie. The books use it as a last respite before chaos. The atmosphere of the wedding was not, however, exactly carefree. But Harry spends much of it observing, stuck in disguise, worrying about Voldemort. The film cuts more directly to the tension, but also shows Bill and Fleur's bravery in defying the darkness with their vows. Their union becomes an act of resistance. Bill, battle-scarred but unbroken, stands before family and friends, declaring love in defiance of fear. This cinematic choice deepens his strength of character in a single, quiet, but defiant act. Even his interaction with Harry at Shell Cottage is more direct in the film. When Harry wants to bury Dobby without magic, the film gives us Bill's supportive, solemn gaze. It's subtle acting, but it says more than the book's brief mention of Bill being there. He becomes a witness to Harry's grief, sharing in the cost of war. He doesn't lecture or pity, he honors the moment. That emotional intelligence is power of a different kind, one the film doesn't shy from giving him. He's not just a fighter, but a caretaker of the broken and grieving. The books treat Bill as a Weasley first, an Order member second. He is, after all, Mrs. Weasley's beloved oldest boy. The wedding is a family event. His injuries are a family tragedy. The film recognizes that, but expands him into a soldier who chose the Order's fight knowing it might kill him. It makes his love for Fleur feel less like a personal subplot and more like part of the larger tapestry of resistance. He's the man who opens his home at enormous personal risk, who joins the final push, even if it means dying scarred, unrecognizable, but defiant. Fenrir Greyback himself becomes a more visceral threat in the films, which in turn makes Bill's survival more impressive. We see Greyback in the Battle of the Astronomy Tower, monstrous, salivating. His presence on screen is unambiguous terror. Bill's face carries the scars, but his eyes carry unbroken will. The film understands that showing the horror makes showing the courage meaningful. When Bill stands firm despite what Greyback did, the audience feels that he's not a background character but a frontline survivor, a promise that the monsters won't win. The movies also benefit from casting and visual language. Domhnall Gleeson's performance gives Bill quiet gravitas that no page description alone can fully convey. He's careful, serious, but with an edge of humour and warmth that suggests the curse breaker who liked ancient traps and goblin vault. He looks like a man who's been to tombs in Egypt, fought dark magic, and learned the price of underestimating evil. When he talks about Gringotts security or goblin politics in the film, there's no sense of lecture, just hard-earned experience. Ultimately, the film version of Bill is the Weasley who never stops fighting, who lives with the cost of war carved into his skin but refuses to be bitter or broken. The books honour that with subtle grace, but the films choose to make it explicit. He is the defender of Shell Cottage, the protector at the Burrow, the comrade in the Order of the Phoenix. He is the man who stands beside Harry, Ron, and Hermione, not as their elder brother's older brother, but as an ally who knows what the world will be if Voldemort wins. His strength is not raw power, but relentless commitment, and the film shows us that in every scene he's given. Number 20, Kingsley Shacklebolt. Kingsley Shacklebolt's image in the films grew into something grander and more vividly commanding than the subtle charisma of the books ever made explicit. In Rowling's text, he is introduced as a highly respected Auror and a trusted member of the Order of the Phoenix, yet so much of his skill remains implied, shrouded in the hush of secrecy that defines wizarding espionage. When Harry first hears about him, it's via his role in the false Sirius Black hunt. Shacklebolt's been putting out the story that Sirius is in Tibet, Utp Ch 5, a line that captures his cunning but says nothing about the raw, magical power that the films later showcase. The movies, unencumbered by the internal monologues of the book, seize the opportunity to turn this careful operator into a general at the front lines, robes swirling, wand blazing, barking orders that no one dares ignore. The contrast is most obvious in the scene of the Seven Potters' flight from Privet Drive. In the book, Kingsley is part of the protective convoy and duels a Death Eater in the skies. Kingsley Shacklebolt's voice yelled, "Take out the one with the glasses." DH Ch 4. It's swift, chaotic, barely described. The film, by contrast, turns this into a showcase for Kingsley's imposing presence. His voice booms above the thunder of broomsticks and curses cutting through fear. He flies with military precision, giving curt, efficient instructions, fending off bolts of green light with a practiced flick of his wand. Even in the middle of deadly pursuit, the camera lingers on his steady eyes, the set of his mouth, a man entirely in command, refusing to panic. This cinematic flourish transforms him from a background guardian into a battle-hardened protector whose authority can't be questioned. It is in these film sequences that Kingsley emerges as the Order's natural field commander. While Remus Lupin exudes calm intelligence and Mad-Eye Moody seethes with paranoia and experience, Kingsley feels built for war. The films give him movements that radiate authority, the squared shoulders of a soldier, the assessing gaze of a tactician. When the Death Eaters attack during the transfer, Kingsley's wand work is fast and fluid, sending hexes screaming in elegant arcs while he maneuvers to shield his partner. The films make us believe in him as not just an auror but a duelist of the highest order, worthy of leading wizards against Voldemort's finest. In this, they correct the book's omission of showing just how an auror earns such reputation. His leadership is not merely implied but dramatized in every action shot. In the Battle of Hogwarts, the film places Kingsley right in the thick of the defense, his deep voice shouting orders over the crashing walls and the roar of giants. Where the book offers, Kingsley Shacklebolt was dueling Dolohov. D.H. Chach. 36, the movie sets it ablaze with tension and choreography. Kingsley hurls spells in rapid succession, deflects a killing curse with a barrier of light, turns on his heel, and disarms and pulls attacker with a whip-fast gesture. This is not merely dueling, it is mastery of combat magic that feels earned through years of aura training. The camera celebrates it, swooping around him as he counters 3 spells at once, reinforcing that in a world of war, he's the man you want, holding the line. Even the staging of his lines in the films gives Kingsley an added layer of gravitas. His declaration at the battle's climax, "The castle's taken some damage, but we can fight from the Great Hall," lands like a commander's order. There is no hesitation, no consulting committees. The book offers no such prominent rallying cry. Kingsley's film version owns the role of de facto general without needing fanfare. His very delivery suggests experience at commanding aura squads, leading high-stakes operations, surviving where others don't. The director's choice to frame him giving orders, wand raised against the flickering ruins, turns him into a figure of legend that the book only hinted at in profile. In this sense, the films transform Kingsley into a necessary symbol for the Order, a disciplined, forceful leader with none of Dumbledore's whimsy or Sirius Black's reckless charm. He is the face of the Ministry as it ought to be, incorruptible, focused, unafraid of the dirt and danger that come with war. The book leaves much of that interpretation to our imagination, content with lines like, "He was a large, dark-skinned wizard with a calm, deep voice, oop, chichvive," emphasizing gravitas, but showing little in the way of his spellcraft. The film refuses to leave it to suggestion, giving us angles of Kingsley with wand upraised, robes billowing, a battle tactician with absolute focus. Part of the power of the film portrayal lies in its physicality. George Harris, the actor, embodies Kingsley's power with subtle but significant choices, the way he steps forward while giving an order, the measured flick of his wand that feels like muscle memory. In the chaos of Hogwarts under siege, these moments stand out. There is a shot of him shielding a group of students with a shimmering wall of blue light, turning just in time to repel a Death Eater's curse without even blinking. It's a visceral promise that this is no mere bureaucrat or political appointee. In the books, Kingsley's political rise is explained through competence and respect, but it is left to the reader to believe in his fighting skill. The films make you believe it without a word. Another memorable cinematic flourish comes from the way the film stages him in contrast with other Order members. Lupin and Tonks, though brave, are shown in closer, more personal combat, faces twisted with emotion. Molly Weasley's duel with Bellatrix is maternal fury incarnate. But Kingsley is composed, a field officer coordinating entire flanks, seemingly everywhere at once. He's seen barking instructions, warding off curses, leading defensive lines. The editing favours him with reaction shots that show calculation rather than panic. Where others are fighting for survival, Kingsley fights to win, a crucial difference the films underline again and again. Perhaps most importantly, the movies give him the presence of someone who could believably become Minister for Magic in the aftermath. In the books, Kingsley's appointment is discussed almost offhandedly. Kingsley Shacklebolt has been named Permanent Minister for Magic, D.H. Chach the 36. We are told he's effective, that he stabilized the ministry. The films do the work of selling that choice by showing him commanding under fire, delivering lines with calm that cuts through hysteria, proving he can make life or death decisions without flinching. It is storytelling economy in cinema. Show him being a leader in war, and the audience accepts him as the leader in peace. There is also an elegance to his magic in the movies that the books only imply. Rowling's auras are described as top-tier duelists, but we see relatively little of their technique. Kingsley in the film deflects curses with arcing shields, summons walls of light, counters unforgivable curses with ripostes that crackle. It is choreographed wizardry designed to sell mastery, making him stand out even among other capable fighters like Arthur Weasley or Fred and George. His dueling feels rehearsed, drilled, and purely professional. He doesn't get lucky, he wins because he's better. Even subtle cinematic choices amplify this. In the Battle of Hogwarts sequence, he is given space in the frame that highlights him as the eye of the storm. While rubble crashes and giants roar, the camera will find Kingsley holding ground, wand steady, eyes scanning for threats. It's a classic war film visual language. He's the sergeant or captain who knows the battle map even as the chaos rages. In the book, those details are lost in the sweep of Harry's limited perspective. The movie, unconstrained, gives us a general's view of the fight and positions Kingsley at its heart. That treatment serves to deepen our understanding of the wizarding world's internal logic. The auras are meant to be the magical equivalent of elite law enforcement and military special forces. By showing Kingsley fighting with unmatched calm, directing others, improvising defenses, the films underline that these are not simply bureaucratic investigators, but the wizarding world's first and last line of defense against dark magic. It helps sell the threat of Voldemort's army when even someone as competent as Kingsley has to fight with everything he has. The film's Kingsley makes the Death Eaters look appropriately deadly by the way he battles them at full power. Crucially, this cinematic Kingsley also embodies the moral center the Order needs. While the book signals this in lines like, "Kingsley was highly respected at the ministry," the film shows him stepping between terrified students and certain death, using protective spells rather than lethal ones when he can, and keeping his composure while others break. He becomes the Order's answer to Voldemort's cruelty, disciplined, strategic, but unwilling to lose his soul to violence. That's an aspect the book sketches lightly, but the movie carves in stone with every determined set of his jaw. It's not simply that the film made Kingsley stronger in the sense of raw magical ability. Rather, it constructed a complete portrait of martial authority. It filled in the blanks the books left for us to imagine, showing what an aura of Kingsley's caliber must look like in battle, how he would command under pressure, how his strength and morality would make him the natural successor to lead a broken ministry. It's the rare case where adaptation doesn't just preserve the spirit of the character but enhances it, making him more vivid and, ultimately, more believable. Kingsley Shacklebolt cinematic transformation is not merely fan service or spectacle. It's an artistic choice that respects the promise the books make about him while delivering on it in a visual medium. The books gave us the rumor of his brilliance. The films showed us the man himself, wand in hand, voice unshakable, leading the wizarding world out of its darkest hour. Number 21, Narcissa Malfoy. Narcissa Malfoy stands in the pages of J.K. Rowling's novels as a figure whose loyalty is never truly to the Dark Lord but to her own blood, and yet she moves quietly, the embodiment of aristocratic fear and cold detachment. In the books, she is a mother above all else, her single defining act, the whispered question in the Forbidden Forest. Is Draco alive? Is he in the castle? The line is stark and raw, showing a mother's terror rather than defiance. But on screen, Helen McCrory gives her something the page only hints at in shadows. A lethal composure, the glint of a strategist's mind even in the moment of deepest maternal desperation. The film transforms Narcissa from a worried parent into a woman of iron, someone whose poise under the eye of Voldemort himself makes her more powerful than any duel could suggest. The cinematic version of Narcissa arrives with an energy that alters the tone of the Malfoy family entirely. In the books, Lucius Malfoy's disgrace after the Ministry raid leaves their family fearful and scorned by Voldemort. Narcissa is described with phrases like pale and frightened, and shown with trembling hands as she pleads with Snape in Half-Blood Prince, "You will help me?" There is vulnerability in those words. The film does not deny that fear, but layers it with something more dangerous, a calculated self-possession. When she kneels before Snape on screen, there is both anguish and unmistakable command in her voice, as though she is issuing a demand cloaked as a plea. This subtle shift reframes her as a formidable negotiator, not simply a desperate mother. The camera loves Narcissa's stillness in a way the text cannot. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, the book describes her clutching Draco and sobbing as she persuades Snape. But on screen her face hardens, her eyes sharpen. Even when she is at her lowest, she is thinking. This is the essence of her film transformation. She is never out of control. She exudes the sense that she knows how to move within the treacherous world of the Death Eaters, that she has survived the serpentine politics of pure-blood society, not because she is cruel, but because she is clever. Her maternal instinct is not softened in the film. It is sharpened into a blade. The most potent example of this sharpening comes in the Forbidden Forest. In the book, her deception is clear, but described quickly. Voldemort says, "Check if he is alive," and Narcissa asks Harry the question before declaring him dead. Rowling writes simply, "Narcissa Malfoy seemed to take a deep breath. That is all. There is little drama in the words, only function." But the film turns this into a chilling duel of minds. Helen McCrory's Narcissa leans in, whispers, pauses. She weighs Harry's answer with regal calm, and when she lies to Voldemort, declaring he is dead, her voice is steady as granite. The entire scene hangs on her performance, giving her the power to change the outcome of the war without a single wand movement. What the film does so well is transform that moment into something that feels like an ultimate act of control. In the book, it is an act of love but carries no real sense of triumph. The reader sees her as a mother who would do anything to see her son again. The film retains that but also lets her win. She outplays Voldemort. It is not simply maternal devotion but cunning. She knows exactly what to say, how to say it, and she does it without blinking. She becomes the last person Voldemort would suspect of betrayal, which makes her the only person who can fool him. In that, the film elevates her from a supporting figure to a queen on the chessboard. Even the design of her character on screen signals this added strength. Her hair, a stark stripe of black and white, looks like the heraldic badge of a family that prizes blood above all, but it also gives her the appearance of a predator in winter camouflage. Costume and makeup tell the viewer that she is part of Voldemort's circle, but not of it. She is too controlled, too self-aware. Lucius unravels visibly over the films, his hair unkempt, his clothes dishevelled, as his favour with Voldemort fades. But Narcissa remains composed, her gowns severe, her bearing unbroken. She is never Voldemort's creature, even when he wins their house as a prize. In this sense, the film corrects something the books leave incomplete. Rowling's text gives us flashes of Narcissa's iron, but rarely slows down to show it fully. Even when she is frantic in Half-Blood Prince, she does something deeply shrewd. She extracts the unbreakable vow from Snape, but it is described in a single chapter without much reflection. The film expands this scene, letting it breathe, showing us the wheels turning behind her eyes. We see that she does not beg Snape blindly. She ensures he cannot refuse. It is not simply fear for Draco, but a tactical maneuver. She forces his loyalty. She ensures a safety net in the Dark Lord's twisted game. One of the strongest contrasts between book and film lies in how others see Narcissa. In the novels, Harry perceives her as fearful, wide-eyed, and ashen-faced during her brief appearances. There is no sense that she intimidates anyone. In the films, she is magnetic. Even Bellatrix, played with wild abandon by Helena Bonham Carter, must lean in and follow Narcissa's lead when they visit Snape. There is hierarchy in that scene on screen. Bellatrix may be more dangerous physically, more loyal to Voldemort, but she lets Narcissa speak. It is Narcissa who drives the conversation. It is Narcissa who bargains for her son's life with something stronger than fanaticism, cold, clear-eyed strategy. In the climactic forest scene, the film does more than simply show her lying to Voldemort. It shows her owning the lie. Voldemort, so used to command, looks briefly uncertain as she says the words. Ralph Fiennes plays him as wary, sensing perhaps that something is off, but unable to pinpoint it. The tension in that pause is electric. Narcissa has only seconds to decide the war's outcome. She does not waver. She sells the lie so thoroughly that the entire Death Eater army is fooled, leading them to parade back to Hogwarts in arrogant triumph. That moment is not simply a mother's desperate gamble, but the ultimate spy's deception. And it is Narcissa, not Harry or even Voldemort, who controls the narrative in that instant. It is worth remembering that Rowling never wrote Narcissa as a Death Eater. She bears no dark mark. She is not present at the battles. She never directly kills or tortures. Her power in the books is entirely social, familial. She is Lucius's wife and Draco's mother, but the film makes clear that her non-combatant status does not make her weak. Instead, it becomes her strength. She knows how to navigate fear, how to survive in a house crawling with Death Eaters and the Dark Lord himself. The film version uses silence and posture as weapons. She watches, calculates, and chooses her moment with surgical precision. In the novel Deathly Hallows, Harry's point of view flattens Narcissa's big moment. He simply notes that she lies to Voldemort. There is no insight into how hard that choice is, how much risk she takes, or how convincingly she must deliver the lie. The film makes the audience feel all of that. Her calm is terrifying. Helen McCrory does not flinch, does not show her heart racing, does not blink in panic. She performs loyalty to Voldemort so perfectly that he cannot see the blade in her hand. It is a masterclass in subterfuge, revealing that her love for Draco is not just powerful, but weaponized. Another telling moment in the films is how Narcissa treats her husband. Lucius in the books collapses into disgrace after the prophecy fiasco. Voldemort breaks his wand, humiliates him. Narcissa in the films remains by his side but never loses her dignity. She is the one who holds the family together when Lucius is falling apart. Her silences around him are heavy with judgment. The camera catches those glances, suggesting that she is the one thinking of the family's survival while he wallows in failure. It is a subtle assertion of dominance, showing that she has taken the reins of the Malfoy legacy without ever raising her voice. The final battle in the books does not grant Narcissa a dramatic exit. She flees with Lucius and Draco, her family intact. It is a morally ambiguous ending. She does not fight for Voldemort, but does not join the Order. The film keeps this but deepens it. Her leaving is not cowardice but clarity. She knows when the war is lost. She knows when to cut ties. She chooses Draco over any cause, over any master, and drags her disgraced husband with her. There is a quiet defiance in the way she turns her back on Voldemort's ruin, a rejection of his entire ideology that is as decisive as any killing curse. Perhaps the most remarkable thing the film does is show that Narcissa's strength has always been invisible power. She does not need duels. She does not need grand speeches. She simply needs to wait for her moment. When it comes, she is ready. She proves that courage is not the absence of fear, but mastery of it. Voldemort is a genius of terror, able to read minds, sense deception, cow entire armies. Narcissa beats him with one lie told for the right reason in the right moment. It is one of the quietest acts of rebellion in the entire saga, but in the film it resonates with thunderous power. It is no wonder that viewers leave the final film with Narcissa's face etched in memory. She becomes more than a mother in distress. She is the architect of Voldemort's downfall, however, indirectly. She is the reason Harry can get back to the castle alive. She changes the shape of the war without lifting a wand. The book gives her this role, but the film celebrates it. It gives her the gravity of a Shakespearean queen whose loyalty to her bloodline is her salvation and her triumph. She becomes the proof that love is not only warm but deadly, that a mother's promise can break the world's most feared dark wizard. The true genius of the film's Narcissa is that she redefines what strength means in a world obsessed with power. While others fight, she calculates. While others serve, she chooses. While others seek glory, she protects. The scene in the forest is her coronation, not as a Death Eater, not as a coward, but as the mother who broke the war with a whisper. In that moment, the film claims something Rowling only sketched. Narcissa Malfoy is perhaps the most dangerous kind of opponent, one who has everything to lose and will do anything to keep it. Number 22, Arthur Weasley. Arthur Weasley was never meant to be the most intimidating figure in the wizarding world, and that is precisely why the film adaptation's subtle elevation of his strength feels so rewarding to watch. In the books, he is described as genial, inquisitive, and somewhat distracted, the sort of wizard who would rather figure out how a rubber duck works than perfect his dueling spells. When Harry first spends time at the Burrow, Arthur's enthusiasm about muggle plugs and batteries creates an endearing sense of mild chaos. He is the gentle father of a large, often squabbling family, keeping the peace with warm words and dry humour. Now, Molly, we mustn't judge muggle inventions too harshly. It is his typical stance. He is not depicted as a warrior so much as a kindly scholar of the mundane, a man whose bravery seems to lie in his patience and tolerance rather than his wand arm. Yet even in the books, there are glimmers of his commitment to the fight, just rarely emphasized. J.K. Rowling gives us scenes in which Arthur is quietly part of the Order of the Phoenix, attending meetings in Grimmauld Place, risking ministry surveillance to pass messages. He is attacked by Nagini while guarding the Department of Mysteries. But even that moment, grim as it is not framed as a duel. Rather, he is caught off guard, nearly killed, saved only because of Harry's connection to Voldemort. The text describes it with pity more than with awe. Arthur's been badly injured, Dumbledore says with grave simplicity, leaving the impression of a man who was vulnerable, almost out of his depth, trying his best but not destined for combat glory. Contrast this with the films which choose to draw Arthur into the action with deliberate cinematic weight. The most striking example comes during the battle of the Department of Mysteries in Order of the Phoenix, where Arthur is shown dueling Death Eaters with confident precision. He stands back to back with fellow Order members, wand whipping in arcs of light, deflecting curses and firing back with calm, focused aggression. There is no trace of the bumbling father here. Instead, the camera treats him as an equal to Kingsley Shacklebolt and Mad-Eye Moody, men whose reputations as combat veterans need no explanation. It is a clear, intentional choice. This. Arthur is not only brave in a moral sense, but trained, competent, and formidable when lives are at stake. This evolution is made even more striking because the films tend to cut or shorten so many Order scenes overall. They are economical with screen time, often reducing subplots and simplifying character arcs to keep the story moving. Yet Arthur is granted a full share of the fight choreography and the dramatic tension. In one tight shot, he blocks a stunner and counters with a disarming spell that sends a masked Death Eater tumbling back. There is no awkward pause, no comedic flourish to soften it. The camera lingers just long enough to show his resolute face, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the enemy. It is the moment when the audience realizes that the gentle dad has teeth. This portrayal changes how the audience feels about the Weasley patriarch overall. In the books, his significance in the Order is mostly implied through Molly's worry, Dumbledore's assignments, and the fact that he is attacked at all. But the emotional impact rests on the idea that Arthur is in over his head, making his wounds seem tragic rather than heroic. By contrast, the film offers a mentor figure, one who can hold his own in a fight while still maintaining his essential goodness. He becomes, in effect, a sort of older aura without the official title, someone whose experience and dedication match those of the best fighters in the Order. This change elevates not just Arthur, but the Weasley family itself in the viewer's mind. They are no longer merely the kind, poor, loving household, but also a family of capable defenders. Arthur's strength in the films also resonates because it reframes his moral courage in physical terms. In the books, his main moment of confrontation at the Ministry, outside of his injury, is more political. He argues with Lucius Malfoy in the second book, lunging at him in flourish and blots, but it is a clumsy scuffle played for humour more than menace. Even the quote is slightly comic. "If you've got something to say, Malfoy, spit it out." The fight ends with Molly scolding him in public. It is meant to show Arthur's principles, his refusal to be bullied, but it never makes him seem dangerous. By contrast, the film version has him confronting Death Eaters in the heart of their terror campaign, exchanging spells in the chaos of a full battle. He's not merely principled, he is willing and able to enforce his principles with force. This shift feels particularly important when we think about Arthur's role as a father. In the books, he protects his children with words, with kindness, with example. He tells Ron to avoid dangerous curiosity about the diary, tries to calm Molly's fears about the twins' jokes, and reassures Ginny after the Chamber of Secrets. But in the movies, his protection becomes visceral. During the battle in the Ministry, there is a moment when the camera catches him glancing quickly at Tonks and Lupin, fighting side by side. He nods, then turns to Duel, another Death Eater. It is the nod of a commander acknowledging allies, but also a father trusting his own family to hold their ground. The threat is real, the violence immediate, and Arthur is right there in the middle of it. It sends a message to the audience that he will not leave the fighting to others while his children are in danger. Another way the films amplify Arthur's strength is in their subtle attention to his calm. In the books, his calm is almost absent-minded. He forgets where he put things, enthuses about the wrong details, and sometimes exasperates Molly with his distracted approach. The movies preserve his gentleness but sharpen it into steadiness under pressure. Even before the Ministry battle in Order of the Phoenix, there's the scene in Grimmauld Place when Sirius, Moody, and Arthur discuss Voldemort's return. Arthur's words are few, but he stands close to Moody, eyes steady, voice low. It's not the chatter of a hobbyist about plugs, it's the measured confidence of a man who has made peace with fear. In a world where even seasoned fighters like Sirius show flashes of recklessness, Arthur becomes the quiet centre, not showy, but unshakable. This transformation is all the more convincing because it does not discard his essential character. The films don't turn Arthur into a swaggering hero. He never taunts enemies or boasts of his prowess. His spells are precise, not flashy. Even in the dueling scenes, there's a practicality to his movements that suggests training, not ego. It is a reminder that the best fighters are not always the loudest ones. The movie Arthur fights because he must, not because he wants to. This nuance preserves the moral quality of the character while expanding his capabilities. He remains the man who cares deeply about Muggle rights, who refuses to discriminate, who chooses decency, but he is also the man who will not let Death Eaters win without a fight. Number 23, Cho Chang. Cho Chang's arc in the Harry Potter universe is often remembered in the books as a tale of sorrow, shadowing her brightest moments, her defining feature too frequently tied to Cedric Diggory's death and the uneasy, halting romance with Harry. J.K. Rowling's pages paint her with the delicate strokes of grief, fragility, and miscommunication. A girl whose tears at Madame Puddifoot's, whose harsh words at the mention of Hermione Granger etch her into our minds as someone drowning in her loss. Yet the films, with their cinematic need for clarity and spectacle, recast her image in a subtler yet crucial way. They made Cho Chang into a witch who, while grieving, found her anger and turned it into resistance, a fighter who stood beside Harry in the room of requirement not as a passive student, but as an eager pupil and ally in the growing war. It is true that in Order of the Phoenix the book gives Cho Chang a spot in Dumbledore's army, but it's almost easy to forget this fact amid the emotional storm that follows. Harry's own narration is clouded with embarrassment, irritation, even a touch of pity. We see Cho practicing but rarely excelling. The text tells us she can conjure a respectable shield charm, Protego, but it feels like a footnote compared to Harry's thoughts of how pretty she looks when she cries. Rowling herself writes, Cho was crying again. Harry felt utterly helpless. The repeated emphasis on her tears swallows the potential for her magical skill to shine, making her training feel secondary, something she did to be near Harry or to escape her mourning for Cedric. The film, however, could not so easily render her tears the whole story. Visual storytelling made it necessary to show what she could do with a wand in hand, what she could become when she stood in the room of requirement. Instead of focusing on whispered rows in Hogsmeade, the film devotes precious screen time to Cho demonstrating spells with precision and calm determination. When Harry leads Dumbledore's army in practicing the Patronus charm, Cho's silvery swan is not just a symbol of grief, but of real talent, rising into the air with grace. It is one of the few Patronuses in the room, proving her ability to master advanced magic that many of her peers cannot. Even more striking is that in the book, Cho's Patronus is not even mentioned at the DA meetings. Rowling writes in general terms of the students' learning, Harry was pleased to see that everyone was making progress. But Cho's success is buried in the crowd, unnamed and unsung. By contrast, the film's deliberate focus on her success elevates her to a highlighted member of the DA, showcasing not just emotional fragility, but determination, discipline, and magical power. It is a subtle rewriting of her place in the story, from sad love interest to capable young witch with a reason to fight Voldemort's regime. The movies also avoid getting lost in the jealous tension between Cho and Hermione that the book leans on heavily. In the novel, Cho's suspicion of Hermione, inflamed by Rita Skeeter's article, turns Harry and Cho's second date into a disaster. Rowling describes she had started crying halfway through the date and had run out of Madame Puddifoot's. The emotional mess becomes the defining memory of Cho's character in Order of the Phoenix. But the film compresses or outright removes these scenes, cutting away that jealous bitterness and leaving us instead with a Cho who isn't bogged down in squabbles over Harry's friendship with Hermione. This frees her to be portrayed as a more mature, serious student who genuinely cares about the fight against Umbridge and Voldemort. We see this most clearly in the training montage in the Room of Requirement in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, 2007. The camera lingers on Cho's expressions of concentration, her laughter at small triumphs, and her willingness to take corrections from Harry. In the book, Harry's irritation at Cho's tears is front and center, pushing the training into the background of their doomed romance. But the film reverses this priority. The romance is suggested in glances, a brief kiss, but the primary focus is on their shared mission. In this visual retelling, Cho is neither tragic heroine nor emotional burden, but a member of the resistance. One of the most compelling differences lies in how the movie Cho participates in the rebellion against Dolores Umbridge. In the books, Cho's involvement is overshadowed by the betrayal when Marietta Edgecombe informs on the DA Rowling writes Marietta was standing there, her face horribly disfigured by the word sneak. The betrayal is blamed entirely on Marietta, while Cho, who defends her friend, ends up in a heated argument with Harry. The rupture of their relationship dominates the final notes of her arc in Order of the Phoenix. But the film takes a simpler, more direct approach. Cho herself confesses under Veritaserum. It might seem like a betrayal at first glance, but it also grants her the dignity of agency. She does not stand by a friend's cowardice, but pays the price for being forced to speak. This choice transforms her from an angry, suspicious girlfriend into a victim of Umbridge's cruelty, making her role in the student rebellion more tragic, but also braver. The difference matters because it defines how we see Cho's courage. Book. Cho seems hesitant, emotional, undone by grief and suspicion, and is given little room to shine beyond Harry's resentful gaze. Her moments of defiance are overshadowed by romantic disaster. But film Cho, despite betraying the DA under duress, is shown actively resisting, training with skill, and standing as an example of the personal cost of rebellion. We see her trembling but raising her wand, her eyes wet but determined. The visual medium refuses to reduce her to a footnote in Harry's emotional journey, making her a tragic but strong fighter for what's right. Even in small cinematic details, Cho's power is underscored. In the film's depiction of the Room of Requirement sessions, she moves confidently among the students, is shown helping others, and executes spells with clean precision. She becomes part of a cohort of revolutionaries in training, not just a sad girl tagging along to stare at Harry. The film's montage editing emphasizes teamwork and shared struggle, showing Cho as a central piece in this tapestry of teenage rebellion. When the students cast shield charms together, Cho's wand work is sharp, suggesting a disciplined mind focused on the larger goal. The film also allows Cho's grief to become a source of motivation, not paralysis. Instead of endless crying scenes, we see her mourning Cedric by fighting the people who killed him. It is a classic narrative transformation, tragedy turned into action. The camera captures her solemn face as she learns new spells, but never lingers on her despair. The books tell us Cho is sad, the movies show us she is angry, and anger can be a potent source of courage. It changes how the audience perceives her loss, not a weakness, but a catalyst for resistance. It is important to remember that even J.K. Rowling's narrative hints that Cho is capable. The text says she managed to produce a shield charm during the first DA meeting. Cho Chang had managed to produce a silvery shield that extended in front of her. But the book moves quickly, offering no sense of what it cost her, no drama in her victory, no moment of pride. The film, with its close-up shots and pacing, gives that moment the space to breathe, allowing us to see the sweat on her brow, the intensity in her eyes. By doing so, it elevates her achievement from footnote to defining characteristic. The film also recognizes the need to give Cho a heroic silhouette. When Harry stands before the DA to inspire them with tales of fighting Dementors and Death Eaters, the camera cuts to Cho's rapt expression. She is not merely another Hogwarts student, but one whose personal tragedy gives her extra reason to listen and learn. When she eventually kisses Harry in the Room of Requirement, the kiss does not come out of nowhere. It is earned through shared purpose, mutual respect, and a shared vow to fight what killed Cedric. This is storytelling that understands a character's pain must fuel their journey, not halt it. Even the darker elements of Cho's film arc contribute to her strength. Her forced confession under Veritaserum is tragic but underscores the stakes of defying the Ministry. She is a victim of Umbridge's cruelty in a way that feels personal and direct. It is easy to pity her, but also to admire her for joining the DA despite the risks. Unlike the book's emphasis on Cho arguing over Hermione, the film demands that we see Cho as someone targeted by tyranny precisely because she stood up to it. It is not a flaw in her character that she breaks under torture, it is a testament to the price of fighting back. Ultimately, the film Cho Chang becomes the sort of secondary character who enriches the story beyond Harry's personal narrative. She stands for the cost of rebellion, the price of loyalty, and the transformation of grief into righteous anger. She is not just a name on the DA sign-up sheet, not just a tear-stained memory of Cedric Diggory. She becomes one of many students whose lives are forever changed by Voldemort's return, whose youth is sacrificed on the altar of war. And by granting her skill, bravery, and agency, the movies pay her a respect the books do not fully extend. Number 24, Lavender Brown. Lavender Brown in the Harry Potter books is largely a footnote in the grand tapestry of Hogwarts life, painted with strokes of romantic excess and girlish shrieks that make her more caricature than character. In the pages of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, she is reduced to Ron Weasley's girlfriend, whose over-the-top affection becomes a running joke. J.K. Rowling writes, Lavender Brown was waiting for Ron in the common room. She was perched on the arm of one of the chairs, and Ron sank into it with an expression of utmost happiness while she stroked his hair and called him 1-1. The moment is meant to be absurd, exposing Ron's immaturity and the comedy of adolescent love. Lavender is a prop for this joke, offering no real depth or agency outside of her role as the too-eager girlfriend who becomes the object of Hermione's fury and the Gryffindor common room's entertainment. Yet in the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, Lavender is granted a subtle but important transformation that refuses to let her remain a mere punchline. As Voldemort's forces lay siege to Hogwarts, Lavender Brown appears not as a screaming girl glued to Ron's side, but as a determined witch among the student defenders. The camera catches her in the thick of the battle, wand out, face set with fear, but also with courage. She joins the other members of Dumbledore's army, Neville Longbottom, Ginny Weasley, Seamus Finnegan, who stand on the ramparts and in the courtyards, casting spells at the oncoming Death Eaters. For a character so often dismissed in the books as shallow and silly, this small but vivid cinematic moment reframes Lavender as a member of the Resistance, however minor her role might be in the grand scheme of the battle. This choice to show Lavender fighting is not an accident of editing, but a deliberate decision that reimagines her character's potential. In the books, there is no detailed mention of Lavender in the final battle until she is found dying or dead, having fallen from a balcony. Rowling's text states 2 bodies fell from the balcony overhead as they reached the ground, and a grey blur that Harry took for an animal sped 4-legged across the hall to sink its teeth into one of the fallen. It's later revealed to be Fenrir Greyback attacking Lavender. The horror of her death is not meant to showcase her heroism, but rather the savagery of Voldemort's allies. She dies or is gravely wounded. The text leaves it ambiguous, not as a fighter, but as a victim of violence. Her last act in the books an off-screen scream in the chaos of war. But in the film, the choice to show her casting spells and standing shoulder to shoulder with her friends gives her an agency she never really possessed in the books. This change does not turn Lavender into a war hero. She is not Neville slashing Nagini's head from its body or Hermione and Ron destroying Horcruxes, but it does make her more complete. Instead of a lovesick child who is conveniently written out through a gruesome injury or death, the film Lavender is seen making a choice to stay, to fight, and to defend the castle she has called home for 7 years. This moment is small in screen time, but immense in its implications for her characterization. In the book series, Lavender's defining personality trait is her obsessive love for Ron. She is described in Half-Blood Prince as someone who cannot stop kissing him, who sulks when they fight, and who finally breaks up with him in a melodramatic flourish when she believes he and Hermione are having secret meetings. There's little in Rowling's text to suggest Lavender possesses any significant courage or loyalty outside of her teenage infatuation. She is positioned as a foil for Hermione's intelligent restraint, a comedic example of the hormonal chaos of teenage relationships at Hogwarts. A distraction that must be outgrown. Lavender is effectively discarded once Ron and Hermione's true feelings emerge. The film adaptation chooses to complicate this shallow interpretation. By placing her among the defenders of Hogwarts, the filmmakers turn her into someone whose story did not end with heartbreak, and who did not simply fade into irrelevance after her breakup with Ron. Even as the camera flashes past her in the chaos, there is a clear sense that Lavender made the same choice as so many other students: to defy Voldemort, to risk death rather than submit. She is shown moving in formation with the other DA members, wand raised, lips moving in silent incantations. These shots, though brief, speak volumes. Lavender's love life may have been immature and dramatic, but she has grown beyond that single note. It is telling that in the films, Lavender's death or injury at the claws of Fenrir Greyback is shown in brutal clarity. While the book is vague, a grey blur, and Harry seeing movement over Lavender's body, the film shows Greyback looming over her prone form, her eyes wide in terror as he mauls her. Even though this moment remains horrific, the difference lies in context. In the movie, viewers have just seen Lavender fighting. She didn't cower or hide, she was on the front lines. Her end becomes not just another casualty of war, but a tragedy for someone who dared to stand and resist. This small narrative shift makes her death more meaningful because it is the fall of someone who fought back, not just someone caught in the crossfire. This cinematic choice also helps integrate Lavender more fully into the story of Dumbledore's army and the broader resistance movement. In the books, the DA is largely defined by characters like Neville, Luna, Ginny, and the trio. Lavender's name does not appear among the group who revived the DA to fight the Carrows and prepare for Voldemort's assault. There's no mention of her helping organize the resistance or sneaking supplies to the Room of Requirement. But the film implies she is one of them, one of the many students who choose to rebel, who train for the coming war, who stake their lives on the hope of victory. By showing Lavender casting spells from the battlements, the film invites us to imagine she was always there, part of the quiet army of teenagers who refused to bow. This change aligns with the overall spirit of the films, which often gave secondary characters richer, more visible roles in the Battle of Hogwarts. The movies also show Parvati Patil fighting and Seamus Finnegan lighting up the bridge. Even characters like Dean Thomas are seen dueling Death Eaters. These details create a sense of collective struggle, a reminder that Hogwarts was not saved by the trio alone, but by many students who risked everything. Lavender, too, becomes part of this tapestry of resistance, her small arc transformed from comic relief to quiet bravery.